Welcome to Nightveil, where every shadow hides a secret.
It was a cold, foggy Sunday morning. The rain had finally let up and the smell of chicken soup drifted in from the kitchen. The television was on in the living room, more for background noise than anything else. My dad had always liked it that way. He says it makes the house feel less empty. I sank into the couch and stared at the screen absent-mindedly. I wasn't really watching until the anchor's voice had sharpened. A passenger plane has reportedly gone down in the Northern Highlands. Search teams are being dispatched. Weather conditions are poor. The signal has been lost somewhere near the old forest range. They showed a satellite image of the mountain. Even blurred through studio graphics, I recognized that ridgeline immediately. My stomach dropped. I haven't heard its name spoken on the news in years. And the mountain has a reputation, whispered about in neighboring villages. In the early 1990s, a small plane went down somewhere in this forested basin, roughly 37 kilometers north of my hometown. It had been on its way to the capital when it lost contact over a sparsely populated stretch of dense, forested highlands. On board was a small group of officials and staff. Initial radar readings suggested a sudden and dramatic loss of altitude, consistent with a possible impact in remote terrain. There had been no distress call, no final transmission. The first search teams went in soon after. None of them returned. The wreckage, the people, everything vanished as if swallowed by the earth itself. There had been more attempts after that, each team more cautious than the last. None came back either. The government eventually offered an explanation. The plane, and probably the missing searchers as well, had been claimed by the forest. The forest was a trap. A maze of hidden marshes, sudden flash floods, and unstable slopes ready to slide at the slightest rain. The dense canopy made aerial searches useless. The forest swallowed sound and light alike. It was the kind of place a person could walk into and never walk out. Only a few months after the last rescue team vanished, another was being assembled. Not to locate the plane this time, but to find the missing searchers themselves. The mission was simple in theory. Retrace the steps of those who had vanished, follow the signs that they left behind, and bring back whatever traces of them that we could find. My cousin, Anton, called that rainy afternoon and asked me to join in the search. I had camped in the forest around the mountain before, and he figured that I knew the terrain. I hesitated. I had never been a part of a search and rescue operation before, but still I told him yes. And the team was a motley mix. A handful of uniformed rescue officers, seasoned volunteers who had been on minor missions before, and locals like me who knew the areas better. Together, 20 of us stood ready, small enough to move quickly, but enough to cover the treacherous slopes and deep valleys that had claimed previous searchers. Sensing my unease, my cousin clapped a hand on my shoulder. "Relax," he said. "We don't need miracles, just more eyes and boots on the ground. With terrain this rough, every able-bodied person counts." "I'll do my best," I said, still unsure. "Yeah, just stick with your group and follow instructions. You'll be fine." A tall, burly man approached us from across the clearing. Anton stepped forward and shook his hand. "Kamal, this is my cousin," he said, turning slightly and gesturing toward me. "He'll be joining your team. Knows the southern part of the mountain well. I figured he could help you with navigation and ground searches." Kamal looked me over for a moment, assessing. I nodded and shook his hand. "Nice to meet you, cousin." His voice was calm and friendly. I noticed a faint accent when he spoke. "Kamal's leading the ground unit," Anton explained. "You'll be moving on foot through the southern sector. Armin and Rian will take to the choppers once the weather clears enough for a proper aerial search." They're the lucky ones." Kamal let out a short breath that might have been a laugh. "Must be nice flying over all this instead of crawling through it." Anton smiled faintly. "Oh, somebody has to do the crawling." He checked his watch and took one last drag from his cigarette before flicking it away. Then he turned to me. "If you've got questions, ask Kamal. He's been through this kind of thing more times than he'd like." "You ever seen a dead body before?" Kamal asked me suddenly, flashing a grin. I hesitated. Kind of. Anton shook his head. Kamal raised his hands in mock surrender, still smiling. Hey, I'm just saying, better that he hears it now than frees us up later. You should know what we're dealing with here. I don't listen to him, Anton said to me, checking his watch again. All right, I should head out now. See you tomorrow, boss, Kamal asked. Probably not, Anton replied. I got a few other things to deal with. He paused and then nodded toward me. Hey, Kamal, keep an eye on this kid for me, all right? He shrugged, the corner of his mouth lifting slightly. Oh, relax, I'll treat him like a princess. You be careful, all right, Anton said, fixing me with a firm look. Do your best out there and help these guys. I'm counting on you. The weight of his words settled in my chest, and suddenly the situation felt far more serious than it had a moment ago. As Anton walked away, the forest seemed to close in around us again. The drizzle thickened, tapping softly against leaves and gear. Kamal gathered us inside a bigger tent. A laminated map was spread across a folding table, its corners weighted down with spare batteries and a radio handset. I edged closer, watching as he traced lines across the map with a thick finger, outlining sectors and ridgelines that I recognized from years of hiking the area. We're combing the southern edge first, he said, tapping the map twice. We move slow, stay in visual range, calling anything that looks off, even if you're not sure. And no one wanders. There's a small river up ahead, I said, pointing to an unmarked stretch of the map. It winds through the valley along the base of the eastern cliffs. If we follow it north, the cliffs gradually level out into marshland there. It'll bring us closer to the last known coordinates before the flight lost contact. Good job, kid, he said, giving my shoulder a solid pat. There's an open grass field near the western edge of the mountain now, somebody added, about 4 kilometers northwest of the river. Kamal studied the map carefully, tracing the ridges with his finger. We need eyes on both sides, he said quietly. Hassan, take some men and comb the western edge. Check every 10 minutes. The rest of us will sweep along the river. The guy named Hassan nodded. I wouldn't split a team normally, but here, it's the only way to cover ground safely without leaving blind spots. Radios were passed out and clipped onto straps. Call signs were confirmed. All right, Kamal said quietly. Let's move out. As we stepped into the forest, the village sounds faded behind us. The forest swallowed us quickly, leaves closing overhead, the trail narrowing into something darker and less certain. It took us nearly 3 hours to reach the heavily forested high ground along the southernmost stretch of the mountain. Every step had to be measured. One slip was all it took to send someone sliding. The dirt path climbed gradually but relentlessly, slick with mud from rainwater that trickled down through the dense canopy above. By the time the rocky cliffside finally emerged ahead of us, half hidden behind a thick wall of tangled vegetation, the light had begun to fade. After a brief survey of the terrain, Kamal raised a hand and called us to a stop. This was where we would split up. Kamal pulled Hassan aside and spoke to him quietly but firmly. Radio in every 10 minutes, he said. Once we're on opposite sides of this mountain, the signal is going to weaken. If you miss a check-in, we turn back. Hassan nodded as he looped a strip of bright neon orange flagging tape around the trunk of a tree that leaned heavily against the wet rock face. The colors stood out sharply against the dark greens and grays of the forest. We're gonna regroup here before sunset, Kamal said, checking his watch. No later. Copy that, Hassan replied. With that, we shouldered our packs and turned away from each other, disappearing into separate corridors of trees and shadow. The drizzle showed no sign of easing as we worked our way further around the cliff. It couldn't have been much past midday, but the low overcast sky and the dense canopy overhead dimmed what little light remained. Everything felt muted and gray, as though the forest itself were swallowing the day. My feet had started to go numb after hours of walking, the sensation dulled further by mud seeping into my boots and pooling around my toes. Every so often, Kamal's radio would crackle with static. Brief check-ins followed, clipped voices exchanging positions before dissolving back into noise. Each transmission felt slightly more strained than the last. And Kamal slowed and switched on a high-powered flashlight, its bright beam cutting through the rain and sweeping across the forest ahead of us. Trees and undergrowth sprang briefly into focus before vanishing again into shadow. The cliff gradually sloped downward until we had reached the river. Its surface roiling with rushing water and frothy white currents. Mud squelched underfoot as we carefully picked our way along the slippery bank, each step measured against hidden roots and loose stones. "We head upstream now," I said, glancing at Kamal. He nodded and exchanged a quick look with the others before moving forward. "You really know this place, huh, kid?" he murmured, slightly out of breath as he stepped over a fallen branch. I shrugged. "Just a camper's knowledge. I've hiked these trails enough to know a few shortcuts and safe spots, but I've never gone up the mountain. The slopes are too unpredictable." "Well, that's gonna come in handy," he said, pausing to unfold his map. He traced the river with a dry erase marker, noting the bends and elevations. It had been nearly 5 hours following the river when Kamal's radio crackled, followed by the familiar buzz of static. "Kamal, over." Hassan's voice came through distant and tinny, like it was bouncing off the trees. "Can you hear me?" "Yes, copy," Kamal replied, keeping his tone calm. More static, and then sharp, high-pitched feedback hissed across the line. "We found something," Hassan said. Everybody froze. Even the river seemed to quiet in the tense pause. "What is it?" Kamal asked, his voice steady but low. "A shoe and some torn clothing, bloody. No plane debris nearby." My stomach lurched. "Any bodies?" Kamal's voice dropped, careful, static, and then a faint reply. "No, just pieces of clothing scattered all over the knoll. Too many to count." Kamal's fingers tightened on his radio. "Photograph everything, do not touch them, not yet. You got it?" "Copy." Hassan's voice came through, shaky but clipped. "Mark your position on the map and report back." The forest felt heavier now, every rustle of leaves or snap of a branch making my heart skip a beat. Hassan's report weighed on us like the dark canopy. The river's roar had grown louder, its surface rising ominously, nearly spilling over its banks as if reminding us the valley would not remain safe for long. "We need to get to higher ground, fast," Kamal muttered, pulling the laminated map from his pack and spreading it out carefully. I pointed at the valley across the map. "If we follow it and then cut left right about here," I indicated a turn, "and we can go around the mountain to the west, and that should put us on higher ground and give us better reception." He nodded and marked the trail, studying it for a moment. "Yeah, makes sense. We move carefully. Keep your eyes open, gentlemen."